minutes here to talk about the features in Ignition that can make it so helpful to companies like Ennis Flint, Sugar Creek, and RJ Reynolds in their digital transformations. First of all, Ignition works well with your processes because it's modular. You can customize it to any existing industrial process. But more specifically, you build an application on the Ignition platform to fit your process instead of vice versa. You know, it's not that we have all these pre-built things that you need to now modify your processes to match the Ignition software. Instead, the Ignition software can be customized and massaged to match your processes. And then as your processes change through digital transformation, Ignition has the flexibility to change with it. And so it can grow with you and it can augment your processes as well. It's a single unified platform, installs on virtually any industrial device or server on site or in the cloud. It's extremely scalable, fits architectures of all sizes and types. And you can install Ignition wherever your data and processes are, whether that starts at the edge, whether that's at the plant floor or the cloud or all of the above. You know, and allows you to, like I said, continually add new processes such as data ops as well. And you know, we talked about, you know, common concerns people have. Fortunately, Ignition has some great answers to those questions. You know, we talked before about adopting a new solution can seem time-consuming, difficult, or risky. And Kevin talked about that a little bit with, you know, his as well, and Don as well. You know, people are resistant to change at first. But I love the story of Sugar Creek, of them, you know, taking a week and playing with Ignition. You know, and that's one of the advantages of Ignition is we do have the, you know, free trial from our website. You can just download it and start using it. You know, it's easy and fast with little to no risk. And you can quickly show what you could do in a small area of the plant and then build from there. So you already prove its value before you've invested any money into this. Another concern we talked about was the learning curve. And we try to make that a lot easier as well, make it easier for people to learn. And we have two main things that help with that. The first one is quick start mode. So when you install Ignition for the first time, it'll prompt you and say, do you want to enable quick start mode? And if you say yes, it'll create some simulated device connections for you. It'll create a basic project with basic functionality for you. It'll spin up a database for you and connect to it, all to just kind of give you a sense of what's possible in Ignition and how it's configured. And then from there, you can keep what you need, delete other things, and build that into your final system. So quick start mode really helps you get started right out the gate. The second thing is inductive university. People need to be able to quickly find information that's free and readily available to help them do the types of things they need to do. And so we have spent a tremendous amount of time and effort to create Inductive University, which has hundreds and hundreds of videos online that you can go through to learn about, you know, how Ignition connects to different devices, how to build screens, how to connect to different databases, specific design principles of how to make your screens look good and work effectively. All that information, you know, you don't even need an account. You can just go and access those videos anytime. And you know, lastly, we keep emphasizing security. Security is a big deal. Ignition can help address cybersecurity concerns by allowing data access while supporting first-class security infrastructure. So you can let everyone who needs to see the data see it without adding additional cost, but role-based security features let the company control who sees what and who can access it. And you can integrate with modern identity providers like Okta or Duo, do you know, multi-factor authentication, you know, take advantage of modern security best practices, all those kind of things. You also, you know, are taking advantage of, we're collecting data at the edge, publishing it up to the plant floor, publishing it to the cloud. Maybe the cloud is read-only. You know, you can, with MQTT, set up access control limits within the gateway network. You can create read-only connections. You can do all these kind of things to make sure that you're only putting the right data in the right hands. And yeah, Ignition also works with other programs as well. You know, that's something that's been part of who we are from the very beginning. You know, as we started being cross-platform, running on any OS, and then leveraging open standards like SQL, HTML5, OPC UA, and MQTT. You know, and from there we build connections to various OT, IT, and ERP systems. This makes it easy to access, cross-reference, and analyze all the data in your company's various programs, and empowers the OT and IT collaboration. We also have modules for integration with cloud services in AWS and Azure and other cloud platforms. And so if you want to leverage cloud-based analytics, process optimization, machine learning, Ignition can be the glue between those. It provides the access, the visualization, as well as some processing capabilities of its own. And we're going to do a quick demo for you. So what you're looking at now is an ignition designer. So this is where you go to build an application inside Ignition. And we're starting from scratch. So some things is, you're looking for variables or for data points that are coming from your devices. I don't have any points right here that are called tags in my system. Also, this is a screen. There's nothing on my screen yet except it says, hey, this is data from plant B. Okay, cool, but there's nothing there. And so the company or the situation that we're going to be representing through this quick demo is actually a company that I worked with a while back that made metal sheeting. And for these metal sheets, they had these laser thickness gauges that would measure the thickness of the sheet of metal because they were selling these sheets. And they have gauges for how thick they are, and you have to sell them based on the thinnest point of a sheet. And so they have all these different places that they measure the thickness, and whatever's the smallest measurement is going to be what they have to set the gauge as for the sheet so that they can sell it at the appropriate price. And so obviously they don't want to be measuring too thin. They wanted it to be nice and thick so that they could get those higher gauges, higher prices. And so they were doing that, and they had a system for viewing the thickness from their 4 gauge sensors, and they would take the lowest and they would apply it, and that was fine. And then they said digitization. We want to just start collecting that data and bring it into a system. And so how would you do that with Ignition? Okay, well, I did connect up to a PLC here, and I've got just some tags here that are my 4 gauges that are measuring laser thickness. And so I'm going to go ahead and add them to Ignition here. And now I can see the values. And I have a new sheet, in my case, going through every 5 seconds. And so I can see these values update every 5 seconds with the thickness at various points. Okay, cool. I added tags. They want to visualize that. So we come into Ignition, we say, hey, you know what? I'm going to drag out just a basic shape here. And I'm going to say, this is my metal sheet. Just going to represent that. Could we make this look prettier? Yeah, maybe. We'll put this up top here. We're going quick for today's demo. And then we'll say, I'm going to put some icons on here. Not a smiley face. Let's change which icon. Let's say we'll use this one here. And so I've got this icon that represents where I'm measuring the thickness. And we'll say there's 4 of these, right? So they measure thickness, not just in the corners, but we're representing it today. And so, great, I've got these different measurements of where I'm coming through. And if I want to actually show gauge A on here, I can say, all right, I want to show this as a label. And so now I'm saying that, all right, this is the A thickness, this is the B thickness, this is the C thickness here, and then I've got my D thickness. Cool, now I've got a really simple screen here where I'm seeing my sheet, I'm seeing the different thicknesses, and I can see the value at each one. Maybe I want to take it a step farther and I'm say, well, yeah, but I need to know which one is the lowest each time it scans. And so I pull out another label and I say, okay, I want the value of this to be an expression. And so I'm going to say, I want to take the min of my different tags here. So I say, all right, I'm going to grab this tag and going to grab this tag. And then I'm going to, there we go, grab this tag. And my last tag here. And I just want the minimum. Say, okay, cool. Now this is showing me the current minimum. So it's looking at all these and it's minimum. Maybe I then set this up to write to a label printer and I'm printing off a label and slapping that on here, and that's going to be the gauge that this gets sold at. Cool. I've made a process, but what insights do I have here? Not much yet. And I see my different values. A different one is the lowest at each time. Cool. But to take this a step farther, if I just say I'm going to start storing history for all these tags. So I'm going to come in and say, for all these tags, I'm going to store history just to my demo database here, and say OK. I'm now storing history for all these tags. And what I'm going to do now is actually pull out a component that we have here. And I'm going to pull out a power chart. And this is just a built-in component inside Ignition. This isn't anything too crazy. And so if I add this here, then I can start to view historical trends on screen. And so I could come in here and say, well, I only just started logging data, so I'm only going to grab the last 1 minute of data, let's say. And what data do I want to grab? Well, from my demo DB there, I can see that I've now been logging these 4 tags. So I can come and let's see, select all these, add my selected tags, and so now I can see the history that we've been doing over that last minute. And it looks like, okay, cool, they're pretty bunched. So let's take it a step farther, and I could come in and say, for my axis here, instead of auto ranging this data, I want to view everything between 1.05 and 1.35, we'll say. And so now I can see my data, and okay, so I see that, yeah, it seems to be semi-random here of the thickness of different parts. It fluctuates, but no immediate red flags necessarily. And so what have I gained? Well, maybe somebody starts watching this trend a little bit longer. We get this data in front of more people, and they come in here and they say, you know what, I actually notice that this orange line, gauge C, actually tends to be the lowest pretty consistently. And then they're like, but I don't, maybe that's just me. I need numbers to back that up. Well, then they come in here and they look and they see, all right, I've got my different gauges here. This is auto-calculating the min, the max, and the average for me. And if I look at the average here, most of these are above 1.2, but the average of gauge C is actually 1.18. Now, fluctuating between 1.17 and 1.18. And they say, this should be random in our process. One shouldn't always be lower. And so then they go, and this was a real world example that somebody did this. They created a screen like this. They came and they looked at the math and they said, you know what? It is almost always gauge C that is our lowest. And we've been billing based on that. When really they then went and looked at the equipment and they found that gauge C was actually just calibrated incorrectly. And that it wasn't really the low point every time. And so then they were able to change that calibration. The numbers became the same, and they were able to save money because now they were able to sell at the appropriate gauge level. And so that's a really basic example of somebody who came in and they took their data and they brought it into a system, but then they put it on a screen, put it in front of people, started doing some mathematical calculations, and they were able to make an insight that immediately affected their business. It was low-hanging fruit that they were able to change. Now, it's not always going to be this easy that the mathematical calculation, the pattern that they're looking for is just a low average. But instead, it may be a little more complicated, but rather than using the neural net of people's minds as they're looking at this data, you push data into the cloud and you let machine learning and analytics look for these patterns, look for these anomalies, and then they can give that data back to you in a way that you can then take action on that and see real change. And so that's kind of the goal here. It may be low-hanging fruit that's simple. Your operators can just see it by looking at a really basic screen. It may be that we take that raw data, we push it into the cloud, and then it provides insights that we can then figure out what's going on and take action on. But Ignition can be a tool to help you do all of that. And so we're quickly running out of time. So Don, I'll stop building something here and I'll pass it back to you so that you can finish us out here.
Appreciate that. Very good though, Kent. Totally. I know it's a quick one, but the whole point is to really show how you can begin to get improvements in efficiency in a way that works to build the organization better, but it involves the people involved in that process too. So I think that's a really big point. I want to kind of bookend before we go into a little bit of Q&A with the few minutes we have left, kind of bookend today's discussion with a little conclusion. Appreciate your comments, Kent and Kevin. I think we can sort of summarize the message today by saying that Ignition does really help you connect processes, people, and programs by facilitating the free flow of information across the organization. This improves your visibility into what's happening, the communication between departments, the insights into processes, and collaborative problem solving. And all of those things result in more innovation. So lastly, there's one more big reason to choose Ignition. It really connects to a whole ecosystem of other solutions, such as software, hardware, services that really help you successfully navigate your digital transformation journey. So we're talking about more than just a simple approach, a more complex ecosystem approach. We'll talk more about ecosystem in future presentations. And our account representatives are really glad to help you if they can, anytime with any questions you may have. It was already mentioned that the trial is free.